Fraud is no longer just a risk for auto dealers, it has become part of everyday operations. Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect solution helps you catch income, identity, and trade in fraud in real time without slowing down the sale. Stop fraud. Keep deals moving. Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Thursday, May 21st, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Stellantis will launch 9 new models under 40 grand. Nissan is looking to import Chinese-made vehicles to Canada. And Volkswagen pushes back on Chinese partnership rumors. Plus, Mitsubishi has cut 56 dealerships since 2019. We'll talk about what's driving the shrinking network.
The used car sales are really what these Mitsubishi dealers can sell anymore. Basically, they've become used car stores.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Stellantis is trying to win back buyers with a promise: 9 new vehicles under $40,000 in North America by the end of the decade. 2 of those will even come under 30 grand. The automaker's betting big on its household names. Jeep, Ram, Peugeot, Fiat, and its commercial division are getting 70% of a $70 billion global investment pot. CEO Antonio Filosa says the strategy is about making those investments count.
This replaces where we see the strongest combination of market opportunity, brand strength, and attractive returns.
The plan, which Stellantis is calling Fastlane 2030, includes 11 all-new vehicles for North America. The company's aiming to grow regional volume by 35% while hitting operating margins of 8 to 10%. We'll have more on this and other news from Stellantis Investor Day in a minute. Nissan is exploring the possibility of importing at least 3,000 to 4,000 vehicles a year from China to Canada. The math is pretty straightforward. Canada is allowing 49,000 China-made EVs this year at a 6% tariff, while U.S.-built Nissans face a 25% tariff to enter Canada. That's according to Nissan America's chairman, Christian Munier. The automaker wants to tap excess capacity at its Dongfeng joint venture and is eyeing low-cost vehicles for Canadian buyers, including an entry-level EV for Quebec's strong electric vehicle market. And Volkswagen is not in talks with Chinese companies to deal with overcapacity at its European plants. That's according to CEO Oliver Bloom, who is pushing back on speculation that the automaker might partner with Chinese brands. He told workers there are no talks happening right now, though he did acknowledge VW has excess capacity that needs addressing. The company has cut 50,000 jobs in Germany over 3 years of belt-tightening. And Bloom warned that VW's old playbook, exporting cars from Germany to the world, is being replaced by a need to build locally in key markets like China. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Joining me now to talk more about the news so far as of recording time from Stellantis' Investor Day is Nick Bunkley, Director of Automaker Coverage at Automotive News. Nick, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Nick, so 9 vehicles under 40 grand by 2030. Now, how does Stellantis plan to pull this off while also making money?
Well, that's kind of the thing to watch here, right? Because we've been hearing more and more talk about needing more affordable vehicles as prices have gone up, and Stellantis, like a lot of automakers out there, has followed that trend because the more they can have people pay, the more they make on these vehicles, and they all obviously want to make the most money they can. But now with affordability becoming such a big concern, they feel that they need to have more vehicles in those lower ranges again, and to do that, they're just going to have to basically share platforms, share parts, use their global scale that they created with this merger from a couple of years ago to basically make it less expensive to make these vehicles than it used to be.
Now, Stellantis is putting a lot of eggs in 4 baskets: Ram, Jeep, Peugeot, and Fiat. What does this mean for the other 10 brands?
Well, so what they've said so far is essentially that they're keeping everything. They've got this whole kind of unwieldy looking roster of 14 brands that they ended up with after the 2021 merger. they're focusing on these four brands, Jeep and Ram being the two at the center of their plan in the US. But the other brands, they're not going away. They're just kind of becoming a little more off to the side, just not the major pieces, which they haven't been all along. So it's kind of continuing the strategy, but just sort of more formalizing, where the big sales are is where the investment is going to be.
Now, finally, anything else you've seen or watching for during Stellantis' Investor Day?
With those brands, the four brands in the U.S., Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Chrysler, it is interesting to see how they plan to move those forward. They're expecting all four to notch some fairly sizable sales gains over the next 5 years. They're looking to add like 500,000 sales in North America between the four of those, and Ram in particular is the one where they expect the most growth. They're looking for Ram to gain 60% in sales by 2030, which would make that the biggest brand here rather than Jeep, which is the biggest one now. So they have some pretty ambitious product plans for Ram. They've talked about a compact pickup, which was new to us today, midsize that we knew was coming, but they talk more about that. They have an SUV coming for Ram, so it's interesting to see. There's been a lot of focus on Jeep over the last few years, but Ram is sort of the big story here.
All right, Nick Bunkley, thank you so much for joining me.
All right, thank you.
Coming up, our own Urvash Kakaria joins the show to talk about why Mitsubishi's dealer network is dwindling. That's next on Daily Drive.
Fraud is no longer just a risk for auto dealers. It has become part of everyday operations. According to Experian Automotive, nearly 9 out of 10 dealers say fraud is a top concern, and 70% say it's on the rise. We're talking about real deals slipping through, costing dealerships $10,000, even $20,000 per incident. And it's not just one type of fraud. You've got forged income documents, fabricated salaries, synthetic identities, even trade-in scams. The worst part? Catching fraud often slows everything down, adding friction to deals and frustrating legitimate customers. That's where Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect solution comes in. It's designed specifically for dealers, helping you quickly detect income, identity, and trade-in ownership before it hits your bottom line. No guesswork, no unnecessary delays, just faster, more consistent verification so you can protect your profits while keeping the buying experience smooth. Because the goal isn't just to stop fraud, it's to keep good deals moving. Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect. No more. Risk less. Sell smarter.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Yesterday on the show, we reported that Mitsubishi has cut 56 dealerships since 2019, shedding 16% of its U.S. network. CEO Mark Chaffin told our own Urvash Kakaria that the company terminated about 35 franchises in the past 18 months alone. Nearly 60% of Mitsubishi's first quarter sales went to fleet buyers. Our own Jake Neer talked about it with our own Urvash Kakaria, Atlanta bureau chief for us at Automotive News.
Urvash, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Hi, Jake. Great to be back.
So what are dealers telling you about why Mitsubishi's fleet strategy is causing so much friction at the retail level?
Yeah, for sure. So, Mitsubishi, like many brands, many of these smaller brands, mass market brands, heavily rely on fleets to achieve the volume that they need. In the case of Mitsubishi, according to some internal Q1 data that we looked at, nearly 60% of the vehicles that they sold in the first quarter of this year went to fleets, primarily rental fleets. And this is a big problem for two reasons. One is Mitsubishi has direct relationships with the rental fleet companies and strikes deals with them to take cars, often beating their own dealers in terms of what the dealers can offer those cars for. So it's really taking away from the dealerships. It's taking business away from the dealerships. The other thing is this heavy reliance on fleet is also affecting residual values, and that again is affecting new car retail sales. And here's how it works. The more rental fleet sales they have, then there's this huge supply of relatively lightly used cars. And then the used cars, prices take a dive, which then widens the gap between the new car prices and the used car prices. So then the customer is basically swayed to buy a 1 to 2 year, Mitsubishi car instead of buying the new brand. So it hurts the dealers both immediately when they lose the new car sales to the rental companies, but then on the back end, when they can't sell new cars because the used Mitsubishis are cannibalizing sales. So I looked at some Edmunds data, and essentially Mitsubishi has some of the lowest residual values in the industry, with 1 year old vehicles retaining just about 69% of their original sticker price. And like I said, that kind of creates a situation where the used car sales are really what these Mitsubishi dealers can sell anymore. Used cars are basically, they've become used car stores. I talked to several Mitsubishi dealers, and they all said the same thing. And one retailer said that, he sells 10 new vehicles a month and more than 90 used vehicles versus 90 used vehicles to stay profitable. So essentially, these Mitsubishi stores are really used car businesses with a Mitsubishi logo.
That's interesting. And is that what seems to be the driving force behind this sort of, is exodus the right word, of dealers?
Yeah, I mean, they've lost 56 dealers, about 17%, dealerships are about 17% or 16% of the network since before the pandemic. Now, some of this is Mitsubishi also trying to get rid of the low performers. And the CEO has told us, Mitsubishi Motors North America CEO said that they've got about 30 new dealerships in the pipeline, and that these new stores they say, they expect to have whatever 3 to 5 times the volume of those that have left. So definitely the pressure on the new car business is affecting these dealers and frustrating them. But I think the fundamental problem Mitsubishi has is that they just do not have competitive products on the market. They've essentially got three models, one of which, the Outlander Sport, is on a 15-year-old platform. Eclipse Cross, I believe, is about 8 years old, and then the Outlander, which is their bestseller, is relatively new with a 4 to 5. They're redesigned about 4 to 5 years ago. And Mitsubishi has said and has told dealers that we have all this new product coming up, including a electrified 3-row crossover, a passenger van. They've said that, but then again, they haven't really provided to dealers or to us, to me. When I question Chaffin, I was like, when are these cars going to come? And they just, either they don't provide it, or they are not sure, if they'll meet their timeline. But essentially, Mitsubishi said that they want to essentially launch 4 new models between last year through the end of the decade. They are getting an EV, basically a rebadged Nissan Leaf. It's questionable, who's going to buy that at this, in this stage of the market. But that's coming out in the summer. But then again, they have some, variants of existing models, like a two-wheel drive, Outlander Sport, and some other models to basically lower the starting price.
You mentioned Nissan, an alliance partner with Mitsubishi. We'll talk a little bit more about their news in a second today, but I am curious. Nissan also sort of went through, or has gone through, similar issues in the past. How have they approached it? And is there any sort of kind of crossover for how Mitsubishi could think about this issue?
Absolutely. I mean, Nissan appears to be in some kind of a revival, a business revival in the U.S. After struggling for the past 5-6 years again with the dated lineup, finally the new product is coming to market, and that's obviously helping with sales. They had I believe, the 14th consecutive month of retail sales growth in April. So yeah, they've got their new product that's starting to essentially deliver results at the retail level. Mitsubishi obviously is a smaller company in the US. They don't have the breadth of the lineup that Nissan does. So, in a way, they are more challenged. But for sure, Mitsubishi should take a page out of Nissan's book, like the new Nissan America's leadership led by Christian Munier. I mean, not only are they bringing new product, but they've gotten very aggressive about essentially pushing their US made cars, US built cars, which also happen to be their crossovers, their popular crossovers. And so that's helping them, offset the tariff. Now, in the case of Mitsubishi, they don't make any cars here. There was some talk about them potentially bringing out this mid-size crossover, which would either be based on the Pathfinder, the next generation Pathfinder, or the Xterra, and it would be built by Nissan. But again, I have heard nothing from Mitsubishi or from my insiders at Nissan that any such project is in the works.
Mm.
So, there are different beasts, but I think, Mitsubishi should or can learn from Nissan's revival. Now, it remains to be seen how sustained Nissan's revival is. We're in the early innings. Maybe in a year from now, if the momentum continues, that's one thing, but that remains to be seen.
Now, the news that you covered from Nissan today is interesting. We talked about this at the top of the show today. Nissan is thinking about importing thousands of vehicles a year from China to Canada. Why is Canada the target? Why is it suddenly a more attractive market for Chinese-made Nissans than the US?
Sure. So it's kind of an opportunistic play. I talked to Christian Munier, the Nissan America's chairman, yesterday, and he kind of hinted that again, it was like they were taking advantage of Canada's decision to allow Chinese EVs to be imported. Sort of the play is that it's hard for Nissan or any automaker to export their US made cars to Canada because there's a 25% reciprocal tariff on those cars. Canada with China, they've kind of reached an agreement where Chinese made cars can be imported into Canada up to 49,000 units this year. It increases slightly every year after that. And more importantly, the tariff is only 6.1% versus the 25% tariff that US made vehicles face. So for Nissan and maybe some other automakers, this is a good way to absorb the excess production capacity that Nissan has in China. They have a joint venture with Dongfeng. So it's a way to absorb excess capacity while also shipping Chinese made cars to Canada is more profitable than shipping US made cars just because of the cost of production. So, a couple of things. A, it absorbs excess capacity in China. It leads to incremental sales for Nissan in North America. And it also, more importantly, all those sales are also more profitable because it's coming from a low-cost country.
So is there a risk here, though? I mean, Nissan is taking these unfamiliar Chinese models into a new market, into Canada. Is that a risk for the automaker?
Absolutely. So there are some business risks and then there are some geopolitical risks. On the business risk side, Nissan will have to, bring these Chinese vehicles up to Canadian safety standards. So there's some investment there. Emissions is less of an issue because, these are EVs. The other thing that they have to, as you mentioned, have to consider is that these are unknown vehicles, unknown models to the Canadian audience. So there's going to be some marketing investment. Now, granted, the volumes are relatively low. They've said that they are looking to, import at least 3,000 to 4,000 vehicles to justify the investment that they would need to make in marketing and safety standards. And again, Munier told me that they're very early in the process. They're still investigating it, so by no means is this a done deal. The other concern that Nissan has also is by importing these Chinese-made vehicles into Canada, it could annoy the Trump administration and U.S. lawmakers that for several reasons are very against EVs, Chinese-made EVs entering the U.S. Now, granted, this is in Canada, but still, there's also some general concern that could Canada's decision to allow these Chinese imports also complicate the USMCA negotiations that the US is having with Canada and Mexico? Though I believe that the Canadian officials have said, at least publicly, that they don't expect it to have any effect.
Sometimes what they say is not what's actually happening behind the scenes. You never know. But Urvaksh Karkaria, I really appreciate you joining us to talk about these stories, and keep them coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to automotive news reporters Vince Bond Jr. and Nick Bunkley for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on Stellantis' Investor Day, Mitsubishi's dealer network, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a look at how service centers are dealing with a new shortage of engine oil due to the Iran war.
75% of our additives for all synthetic oils and components is made either in the Middle East or Korea. So it's here, and there's a shortage and there's a problem.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoyed the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.